Hi everybody, welcome into the Wolfman Garden channel. It's first week of February and it's one of the greatest times, my favorite time of the year, because this is when you get to start and plan and start getting ready for the new gardening season, which for this year would be the 2025 gardening season. Now, we have some stuff that we can learn from our garden last year that I'll say in some future videos, but today what we're going to go over are the 8 things that you need to plant right now and direct sow them into the ground in February. And I'm also going to give you 8 things that we need to start indoors or in the greenhouse and start seeding now. That way they're ready for transplant, because some of these take 8 to 10 weeks from the time you seed them until they go into the ground. So let's get started. All right, one of the first things that you want to direct sow into the ground in the first part of February is the sweet peas. The sweet peas actually thrive in cool weather, and by the time the weather starts to warm up, you'll already be harvesting. They don't do really well when the temperatures start to rise, so get them in the ground in February for a great harvest of peas. Another thing you want to plant is spinach. Now, spinach thrives in cool weather. Once spinach is established, spinach will actually tolerate some light frost and some light freezes. Spinach is a pretty hardy plant. The only thing about it is it doesn't really like to be transplanted. So it's best to direct sow it into the ground, because when you try to plant it indoors and try to transplant it, I've never had any luck with it. I'm sure it can be done, but I've never had any luck with it. So spinach is the second thing that you should direct sow in the ground in February. All right, the third thing you want to plant is carrots. Now, when you plant carrots, you want to make sure that you till the soil really deep, because you got to remember, carrots are a root crop, and as they grow deep, if they have to fight against hard soil conditions or real rocky soil, then you're not going to get a very straight carrot. You want to make sure you add some compost to the area where you're going to be planting carrots. And also remember, carrots seeds like to be extremely moist whenever they are germinating. So make sure you keep the seeds moistened whenever you're planting your carrot seeds. The fourth seed that we're going to talk about right now is lettuce. Now, your leafy lettuce is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about your iceberg lettuce and stuff like that. Your leafy lettuce does really well in cool conditions, especially your romaine type lettuce. And I've done really well with the darker lettuce, the red romaine and stuff like that, in the cooler temperatures. But you can direct sow your lettuce in February. And you also want to make sure that you don't bury these too deep, because actually lettuce seed needs light in order to germinate. The next thing you want to plant in February are your onion bulbs or your onion sets. Now, if you want to plant by seed, depending on whether you do a short day or long day variety, depending on your area, down here in the south we plant short day onions. But usually if we're going to seed, we'll seed those indoors somewhere around the first part of December in order to have them ready to go by February. So if you're waiting this long to plant onion seed, then you've probably waited a little bit too long. So it's best this time of the year to go ahead and plant your onion bulbs and your onion sets. The seventh thing you want to plant in February are beets. Now, I don't plant a lot of beets in my garden because I am not a real big beets fan. But if you're a beets fan, now's the time to get them in. Now's the time to get them into the ground and get them planted. I'll give you a little hint here. If you do like to grow beets, if you will soak the seeds in room temperature water for 24 hours before you plant them, and give them a jump start on that germination. And lastly, the last thing that we're going to cover today, as far as direct sowing the ground in February in North Texas, that would be arugula. And I don't know if you're a big fan of arugula, but myself, I am a pretty big fan of arugula. And arugula is one of the plants that are a very cold hardy plant, because it can actually germinate in soil temperatures as low as 40 degrees. So if you want to get your arugula out, now's the time to plant your arugula. Well, let's move it indoors and let's talk about the 8 things that I was going to say about starting indoors in the month of February. The first thing that you can start indoors in February is going to be your tomatoes. Now, tomatoes, you want to try to seed these from about 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Tomatoes are real tender to light frost, so you want to make sure you have no more frost dates when you actually plant them out. But somewhere around mid-February in my zone here, that's when I'm going to seed most of my tomato plants. So the second thing that we can seed in February are going to be your pepper plants. Now your pepper seeds, we want to start those somewhere in the first week, like right now, of February. And the only reason I say that, we're talking about the hotter varieties. The hotter the pepper, the longer the germination period takes. So your extremely hot peppers, your ghost peppers, your Carolina Reapers, Trinidad's, stuff like that, you want to go ahead and plant those probably 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date, because these are going to take longer to germinate. And we're going to put them on heat pads back behind us here. We got these heat pads. We're going to put them on there to make sure the soil temperature stays around that 70-72 degree range. That way we get better germination out of these pepper plants. So peppers do not like frost. We want to make sure we're past that last frost date. The third thing we want to seed in February is going to be our broccoli. Now broccoli is going to take you want to plant those somewhere between 7 to 9 weeks before your last average frost date. Now I'll give you a hint, broccoli is one of the ones that once established out in the garden, they can tolerate a light frost. Not a real heavy frost, but a light frost. The fourth thing that we can seed in February is going to be cabbage. Now cabbage, you want to pair up with your hot peppers or your peppers, because they're going to take you somewhere between that 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date. You want to pair that up and you want to seed that sometime at the same time that you're doing your peppers. The fifth thing is cauliflower. I'm not a real big cauliflower fan, but I will occasionally grow 1 or 2 heads of cauliflower just to give away, because I know I have some family members that really love cauliflower and I usually give it away. I'm not a real big cauliflower fan, so I'm not going to plant a whole lot, and I'm not going to waste garden space on stuff that I don't normally eat. But if you're going to plant cauliflower, then you want to do it somewhere in the mid-February range. Another seed that you can start in February that you want to start at about the same time as your tomatoes and cauliflower is going to be the Brussels sprouts. Now, I love to grow Brussels sprouts. I love to grow Brussels sprouts in the fall because I have a better harvest in the fall with Brussels sprouts than I do in the spring. Because once the Brussels sprouts, they love cool temperatures. So in this area here, once we get past those cool temperatures, it gets hot really quick. So you got to really stay on top of Brussels sprouts if you're going to grow them in the area where I'm at in zone 8. The seventh seed that you can start in February is going to be kale. Now, I know a lot of people don't like kale, but I love to grow kale and I love the taste of kale. So I put it in my smoothies, I put it in a lot of stuff. I'll even cook and put it in mixed kale in with my eggs. So I eat a lot of kale. And kale is a good cool weather crop that it can grow all year round. I've had kale with out in the garden that's had 2 or 3 inches of snow around it, and it still do just fine. So kale is a real good cold hardy plant that you can plant. I haven't done very well with it by direct sowing it, so I do like to take the kale and I like to plant or seed it 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, and you can actually put it out a little bit sooner than that last frost, and it's going to do just fine as long as the roots get established good before you actually have that last frost. Last but not least is Swiss chard. Now, Swiss chard, you want to try to seed it somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. And I'm a big fan of Swiss chard. I love the taste of it. I've had really good luck with it. To me, Swiss chard is a very forgiving plant. Once you get past that frost date, it usually does fairly well, and it does really well, especially when the temperatures drop back down into the low 40s and upper 30s. It still will do just fine. And that covers the 16 things that we're going to plant this February, starting our garden for 2025. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, think about subscribing to the channel. Hit that like button, hit that bell notification, that way you're notified every time I put a video out, and leave your comments in the bottom. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you're growing and what you plan to start and grow this year in February. And like always, keep it growing.